All right, welcome everybody. We're going to open the Planning Commission meeting tonight, and we're going to start with the flag salute. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Oh,
Commissioner Brashears, Commissioner Munn,
Present here.
Commissioner Garrett Kunerowski,
Here,
Commissioner Port is excused, Commissioner Prenovo,
Here.
Commissioner McLean,
here.
Vice Chair Robertson,
Here.
Chairman Savage.
Here. All right, meeting minutes from December 15th, 2021. Has everyone had a chance to review those minutes, and are there any additions or corrections or questions on those? All right, I see none. Then those minutes stand as submitted. And we'll move on to citizen comments. I understand we don't have any citizen comments that are not related to tonight's hearings. Okay. Then we'll go to the first public hearing. This is planning file AR-21-06 and MLP-2110. Before we open the public hearing, I'm going to turn it over to our city attorney to go over the format and rules for the meeting tonight.
So tonight's hearing will be pursuant to the quasi-judicial hearing.
I was waiting to see if Jeffrey was going to jump in. All right.
He must not be able to hear you.
Can you not hear me?
Is your mic
Have
on?
him do his legal thing.
No, yeah.
No.
There you
Hello? Oh, there it goes.
All right.
If you want to do
Hey,
his
if-
legal
All right. So tonight's
If-
hearing will be pursuant
There you go.
to the quasi-judicial hearing procedures set forth in ORS 197.763. At the commencement of the hearing, all counselors or commission members will be asked to announce any ex parte contact or conflicts of interest. Ex parte contact is contact with anyone outside the committee meeting or with the property itself regarding the questions or issues before the council. If you have any questions about either ex parte contact or conflict of interest, please bring it up and I will be happy to address it. We will start out with the staff report. After the staff report, we will allow questions of staff by the commission. We will then have public testimony in the format that has been provided in the notice of the action. The public testimony from audience members or anyone on the phone call may provide oral or written testimony concerning issues relevant to the hearing. Please recognize that all testimony or evidence must be directed towards the criteria that is described in the staff report or other criteria in the comprehensive plan or land use regulations. Please note that failure to raise an issue, including a constitutional issue or other issues related to the proposed conditions of approval, if any, accompanied by the statements or evidence sufficient to afford the commission and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issues, will preclude any appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals. An issue which may be the basis for an appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals shall be raised not later than the close of the record at or following this evidentiary hearing. Such issues shall be raised and accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the city decision makers and the parties an adequate opportunity to respond to each issue. Please state your name and address when you testify. We will go through the procedure where the applicant will go first, as it is their burden of proof. We will then open it up to any opponents of the application and then any rebuttal by the applicant if necessary. We will then close the public hearing with all discussion being held among the commission which has various options. With that, do any council members have any ex parte contact or conflict of interest to disclose?
Looks like none.
Sounds good. I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, we will open public hearing. This is proposed 60-unit apartment development and a land partition to divide the current property into two parcels, the corner of Airport Road and Russell Drive. With that, I'll turn it over to Kelly for the staff report.
Thank you, sir. So before you tonight is a proposal for a 60-unit apartment complex at the northeast corner of Airport Road and Russell Drive. The property is located within the mixed-use zone, and surrounding the property to the north is a property that is in the mixed-use zone that's used for industrial uses and is also a planned mini storage development. And then surrounding the rest of the property to the east, south, and west are properties within the designation of residential mixed density. That's either within the city and zoned that, or within the county and has a comprehensive designation of that. And there are public facilities, including water, storm drainage, and sewer within Airport Road and Russell Drive already that the site would be able to access and connect to. The project includes 2 applications, one for a minor land partition, which would take the existing parcel and separate it into 2. This is largely for financing purposes, but they also get the benefit of sort of looking at setbacks in a different way. And so the setbacks for the property are evaluated based off of each individual parcel rather than the development as a whole. And so for the setbacks, for the north side, you use Airport Road as the front setback, and then the eastern property line adjacent to the wetlands as the rear. And then for the one to the south, you use Russell Drive as the front setback, Airport Road as the street side setback, and then you use the eastern parcel as the side setback, which gives them the 5-foot setback rather than a 20-foot, which allows for building F to be oriented in the way that it's currently situated. All of the buildings are oriented with the correct setbacks and sort of sit around the wetland area, which is proposed to be preserved in place. There's no fill proposed as part of the wetland area, and as required per state law, we have transmitted a land use notification to the Department of State Lands to identify the project associated with the wetlands, and they came back with no comments or issues with the application as it sits with the wetlands being preserved. In terms of density, the property is 4.29 acres in size. And the way that our code is set up, the density is based off of unit size, so it's bedroom count. So a 1-bedroom unit requires 1,550 square feet, a 2-bedroom requires 2,000, and 3 bedrooms require 2,425 units. The current makeup is 24 1-bedroom, 24 2-bedrooms, and 12 3-bedroom units. And based off of the calculation, this requires 2.26 acres of land to accommodate the proposed density. And as the site is 4.29 acres, they are within the density requirements of the code. For open space purposes, the development area is 186,000 square feet, which equates to approximately 46,000 square feet of required open space. That's 25% of the site area. 50% of that site area is required to be a usable open space, and 25% of that is required to be located within one area. As identified more clearly within the staff report and on the plan, they meet all of these metrics for open space, and the consolidated open space area is this large area here, and it's adjacent to the children's play area as shown on the map. The usable open space goes around the wetland area and is not inclusive of the wetlands themselves per the calculation for usable open space. And so the development meets the requirements for open space for the code. They also provide private open space with the use of balconies and patios for each of the dwelling units. For parking, the project meets the parking requirements. It's 2.25 spaces per unit, which equates to 135 parking spaces for the development as a whole between the 2 parcels. A total of 136 open parking spaces are proposed, so they exceed the minimum requirement without using an earned parking reduction. And then for bicycle parking, a total of 30 spaces for bicycles are required. They're providing that with including 18 covered bicycle spaces, again, meeting that requirement. For transportation purposes, the site is accessed from 3 different driveways, 2 of which are on Airport Road, and 1 is located on Russell Drive. The driveways are situated to correspond closely with the existing driveways for the across the street, and then also lining up with McKinney Lane. The 2 driveways on Airport Road were put in by the city when the Airport Road improvements were completed. to ensure that they had that connectivity and that cross-section with the other driveways, and to make sure that there was appropriate site visibility for future access through those driveways. For traffic considerations, the traffic count for the project based off of the International Traffic Engineers Manual equates to 326 trips per day that could be generated from the sites. Per our development code, anything over 300 daily trips could trigger a transportation impact analysis if the engineer so identifies it as being necessary and appropriate. However, as we identified in the staff report, there has been a review of the project as it sits. The airport road corridor has been fully improved to its full maximum width and necessary street improvements along this area. The driveways, as I indicated, have been aligned appropriately to ensure the safest movement of traffic and to maintain appropriate clear vision areas. And there have been 3 separate traffic impact analysis completed in recent history along this corridor, 2 of them for the apartment complexes just to the east at the intersection of Airport and Franklin Street. Russell Drive and Franklin Street. And one of them on Airport and Primrose, where the new brewery and food pod are located. And so where the major intersections are have been fully evaluated with those transportation impact analysis, and this sits in between those. And those 3 TIAs have identified necessary improvements for those intersection areas that are already being implemented. And so with those implemented changes, it's been identified as no further additional mitigation is needed once those changes are implemented per those other TIAs. And so based off of that, a TIA has not been deemed warranted to move forward with this project. So that concludes the review of the development itself. As part of the public noticing process, we did receive 1 email, which has been included in the packet for the Planning Commission review, from an individual that's in opposition to the project. And they state the opposition is based off of the existing traffic congestion, specifically around the Safeway area, and additional traffic on the road will just further exacerbate that. And then I do have 1 item of correction associated with the report based off of the staff report and the discussion just had regarding warranting of a transportation impact analysis versus not. It was determined that 1 is not warranted at this point in time. And so we would suggest removing the condition that was mistakenly left in there to say that 1 was required. And so we provided suggested modified finding language associated with that for the Planning Commission if they so choose to move forward with that. So that concludes my staff report. Myself and Ron are available for any questions.
You just answered mine. I was going to ask if there's a difference between an analysis and a study that it refers to.
There is not.
Kelly, there was a email chain, I think it was involving the State of Oregon Rails. Could you or Ron summarize that for us? I was trying to keep up. You know how email chains are, where you have to go to the bottom and read up, and there's a reply to it. And
Yeah, so because of the proximity of the project to the rail line on Russell Drive, we transmitted the project for review to ODOT Rail to identify, is the placement of the buildings in an acceptable location for site visibility for the rail line? Are the driveway placements on Russell Drive of an acceptable location? And are there any conditions or mitigation measures that you would like us to evaluate? The result of that long email chain came back with ODOT Rail specifically saying the site design, they have no comments and they have no conditions or mitigation requests required.
okay, thanks. You guys have any questions for city staff?
I do. The person that wrote the letter in opposition, where are they located on that map? Where do they live?
I do not know.
Yeah.
Further down off of River.
So she doesn't live near this.
No, you have to go down further on River, and it's one of the streets to
Okay.
turn off to the right.
But she does drive that access.
She drives the access.
Okay. I had another question, but I'm going to reserve it for the applicant.
I have an additional question. You mentioned the previous TIAs that were done, and there were some recommended changes that you said either have been implemented or will be implemented. What are those, and have they been completed?
So on Franklin Street, there's the inclusion of a third lane, so it's the center turn lane,
Right.
which has been completed, I believe, is associated with the apartment complex that was built there. The brewery and food pod is still under construction, and so they're still in the process of implementing the changes associated with that TIA. And we're working at the city staff level to implement the restriping requirements that we identified on that intersection area, and getting the right in, right out turn lane.
And that was from Primrose
For the
on
Primrose one,
Airport
yeah.
Road. Okay. Thank you. Last question I have, the 3 driveways coming out onto Russell and Airport, I know those were pre-thought out. I guess this question's more for Ron. Is it better or worse to have multiple access in and out, as opposed to, I guess, restricting it into one spot where traffic is entering and exiting, especially I would say exiting the apartment complex onto Airport? When you have, it seems to me if you have multiple places where people coming out, it's harder for other people to make turns in and out, but I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, you could look at it both ways. I think if you have one access to a big apartment complex like that, you have a tendency to do a lot of stacking on site and not as much free flow traffic. Same thing could be said about turning into it, you know.
Right.
It takes a little bit longer. You've got more options to get into it. When we built Airport Road, we looked at those driveways and set them up to where you get the most sight distance out of it. 2 of them are associated with turn lanes, so you've got protected movement there.
Okay.
The one off of Russell is lined up with McKinney. Excuse me. So it doesn't have a turn lane, but you're in low speed areas. You've got good sight distance. I think it'll be just fine.
Okay.
It's going to add traffic. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, and I hear people's concerns, but the reality is with growth, there's going to be traffic.
Increased traffic, right.
It's got the capacity. You know, I think the complaint that you saw was based on the Safeway entrance into Safeway.
Yeah.
And staff has noticed that as well. I think it's something that's on our radar. The question becomes, what's the fix for it, right? So we're looking at it, but there's not a lot of option there, really.
I was going to say, what kind of options are there? Because the whole area, Airport Road's very well built out, like it's Parkway style built out, but that one area at the Safeway is the most congested spot there.
It'll help when the entrance to the Lebanon retail goes to a right in, right out, and that's part of the Primrose project. So as soon as we can get Primrose open, which we're really close, then you'll have that right in, right out there. And so traffic that wants to exit, say going left there, would use Primrose or go out to the highway and hit where you come in there at Burger King.
Oh,
So
right.
there's options there. And that's the biggest reason we would require a TIA with this, is there really is no mitigation that could be done here. It's built out, it's got the third lane. There's not a lot to do with
Okay.
it, other than just know that there's going to be a lot more traffic.
Right. All right.
More of a comment rather than a question here, but it kind of looks like there's 6 buildings. 3 of them are larger. A couple of them look a little bit smaller on the scale here of the map. So it may be that a lot of the traffic that lives on the south end, the tenants who live on the south end of this lot may choose to just use Russell Drive to access the entrance at the southern part of that lot. So it may deflect some of the traffic off of Airport Road. Just a comment, just something I was thinking out loud, looking at the map there of the proposed build site.
Thanks, Chad. Are there any more questions for staff? Okay, then I will invite the applicant to come forward.
Good evening, Lebanon Planning Commission. My name is Laura LaRock, and joining me is Brian Vendetta with Udell Engineering and Land Surveying, and we're representing the applicant on this proposal today. I feel like all my time speaking up here is very brief. Kelly does a great job giving an overview in both in the staff report and a presentation. I don't have too much to add to that. I think the only thing I would say is that these streets along the site are improved. So most of the improvements will be on site, will be dedicated to the apartments. The site is proposing multifamily and adding some density and units to that area, but with the preservation of the wetlands, it's not as dense as the site would have otherwise been developed. I think the design, taking in consideration and meeting all the development code provision, really does meet the intent of the development code and creates a really great community complex for the city of Lebanon. I think everyone spoke to the transportation concerns that were already addressed, and unless there's any questions, I don't have too much to add to that. I'll conclude mine and hand it over to Brian. Is there anything you want to add for your standpoint?
Good evening. As Laura introduced me, Brian Vendetta, Udell Engineering and Land Surveying. And I really don't have anything further to add. I think the site plan and the packet that was presented clearly meets the code criteria. I know there are some questions that have come up, and they came up with the staff as well when we were going through this with respect to the traffic that's going to be generated. But like Kelly had stated, we've kind of traffic studied this area to death. All of the improvements that can be made within this corridor have been made or are in the process of being made with other projects that are under construction right now. The project's properly zoned, and we feel like we've put a good plan together that works with the utilities that were provided when airport was built and the driveway accesses that were also provided at the time to kind of maximize the efficiency of the site and the general area. If there's anything that you feel the application has been a little light on, we'd be more than happy to try to answer those questions. And at that, I'd offer ourselves for those questions.
Thank you. You guys have any questions for Brian or Laura?
Yeah, I do. In regards to the design and engineering here, if I'm driving into this place and I'm going to park my car and walk to my apartment, it seems like just overall overview looking at this thing, you got all these parking spaces in front of the fourth and fifth building on both sides, but you have these three buildings on this end, and you have these few parking spaces. And then down here in building 6, you've got a few parking spaces down there. So it brings up a question that I have of does this meet ADA requirements as far as handicap parking spots? Now, your answer is most likely going to be yes, it does. But are these ADA parking spots, are they going to be distributed out here so that these people have to get out in a wheelchair and wheel all the way down here to get into their apartment? Because just driving into the driveway with all these apartments and these buildings and these people and these cars,
Sure.
you're going to have to just find whatever parking spot you can. And if you're in a wheelchair, you're going to have to park maybe 100 yards away from where you actually live. So, and I see in some of these little spots, you got like a little dot. Does that mean that that's a handicap spot?
So I'll kind of walk through, at least try to answer your question. So when we do lay these out and we lay them out with respect to the ADA parking stalls, so in the Oregon Structural Specialty Code, it tells us we need a certain percentage of parking spaces based on the overall count of parking spaces.
Right.
So, and then you go to the building code, it asks you to distribute them evenly throughout the site so that most buildings have close proximity access to the ADA stalls. So if you look at our site plan, we do have, and they are tough to see on the small prints, but the hatched areas throughout the parking They represent the aisles. On each side of those hatched aisles, there are 2 ADA stalls, one on each side. So, thank you for that. So if you can look at the big screen, it's like Kelly's following with the cursor, identifying where the ADA stalls are distributed. We've got 2 at the north end, serving buildings A and B. As you go south, we've got 2 that would be serving building C or close proximity to building C. And then we don't put any other ADA parking stalls until we get further down near building D and then building E. Now, building F, I would agree with you. Building F is going to be light and it's going to be a challenge if there's somebody that is in need of an ADA parking space. Right now, our proposal is 1 in addition to the minimum. So I'd agree to add 2 ADA parking spaces and take one of the stalls out and make it an aisle if that would make you feel better about the even
Well, yeah, because
distribution
I'm
of the
looking at
stalls.
building A and B here,
Uh-huh.
and all those parking spaces there, and I don't know, how many apartments do you have in each building?
In those buildings, we have 2, 3, those are 12 plexes, so 2 of them,
Okay, and then you got
24.
2 handicap spots
Correct,
for both those buildings for all those people.
right.
So, I would think that you would want to deviate from, the way that you have this and add more handicap spots in front of these buildings. Because, I'm thinking about the poor folks that got to drive in there and park their car and get in their wheelchair
Sure.
and go 100 yards to get home still, and if it's raining or it's cold outside, that could be
We certainly don't have any problem considering adding more, but I will tell you that our plan exceeds the minimum that's required. And I know that's not always the best way to do it, to just look at the absolute minimum. So what I think would be a fair approach is to make sure that we've got 2 in front of each of the buildings. And I think
doubling what you have here on the plans.
not doubling everything, but saying that we would strategically position a pair of ADA stalls in front of each of the buildings, so each building has access to 2 ADA stalls.
How many parking spots would you lose?
We'd lose 2 if we did that, just looking at the plan.
If I may, just a little bit here. ADA is a legal requirement with building code and federal law. The project meets the minimum requirements to meet the standards that are to be applied. I think that I look at the code requirements in terms of our decision criteria and say that the decision criteria in terms of parking is addressed per our code, and leave the developer with the request to consider additional ADA parking. But since it's not associated with the actual decision criteria within the confines of our decision-making abilities, we could leave that as a request and consideration rather than trying to redesign the project to meet that request at this point.
And I appreciate that suggestion, Kelly, and we would be willing to consider that and work with staff as we come back through with our permit submittals. So we'll take this planning submittal like we typically do. We'll develop the construction documents, and they're going to get another chance to review it and approve it at that time as well.
Good.
And we definitely
Great.
consider restructuring some of those.
Super.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's just something I noticed here, and I thought that maybe we, in all fairness to handicap folks, we should consider that.
Okay. Thank you for that comment.
So probably more of a curiosity question. The minor land partition, is that just a preference of the owner, or is there significance to that?
Kelly kind of hit on the preference. The preference that was been disclosed to me as their engineer and surveyor is they're looking for some flexibility in financing.
Okay.
And to not have to invest so much money at one time. It's a big project. We're going to split it into 2. Each phase is a parcel. Will they stand alone? They will not. There will have to be easements that are recorded between the 2 parcels to share parking and shared accesses. We do have the utilities designed to be split, so they do stand alone on a utility front, but on an access and parking front, they'll have to share an easement to meet the minimum code.
Okay, thank you.
Kelly's report outlines 2 shared community open spaces as well. So it'll function like 1 unit.
Is there any more questions for the applicants? Looks like no. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Is there anyone present or online tonight who would like to speak in favor of this application?
We do have one individual that is not associated with the applicant team.
And that's to speak in favor or opposition?
I am not aware. They haven't.
Okay, then I'll open it up to anyone who would like to speak in favor or opposition or just has comments about this application. Oh, yeah, please come forward, sir. Just state your name and your address and
Sure. Hi, my name is Matthew Green. I live on 120 East Pine Street, fairly close to this development. I'm here in opposition. I'm a wastewater professional. For nearly 20 years, I've been involved in many projects. I appreciate the planning and the metrics used. I also have a family. My children go to Riverside School. There's already 2 large apartment complexes close by. It has put a burden on the schools. Class sizes have gone up. Secondly, said with growth comes issues that have to be dealt with planning. There's a lot of traffic on Airport Road. Of course, west of town, there's another large apartment complex. You have the high school. Traffic on Airport Road, and as one that has to commute to his job, I take Airport Road quite commonly. Congestion's getting very bad in both directions on Airport. In fact, I was a witness to an accident last week at the intersection of Santiam Highway and Airport Road. Additionally, I believe that such dense population, are we really planning for the future capacity of our wastewater plant? I know that we had an issue with our water treatment plant just a few years ago where the city was pretty much compelled to build new facilities to meet the demands of the city. As I said, I think I can leave this here, but I just think if we keep adding densely populated housing, we're going to have to address all these problems sooner rather than later. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
all right. Well, thank you for your time. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor or opposition of this application? All right, I'm seeing none and hearing none, so we will close the public testimony portion. All further discussion will be between the Planning Commission and staff. I think gentleman who came and spoke, he has legitimate concerns. We all know that, the town's growing and we've seen a lot of apartment complexes be applied for and installed in town, and maybe not as much single family homes as we'd like to see, but that's kind of up to the developer owns the land. I would like to throw a question out to Ron because some of the questions were raised about capacity of the sewer and water treatment plant. I know we have a brand new water treatment plant. I assume that has the capacity for well beyond what the city's at now, but maybe you want to address that and the sewer.
Sure. So water treatment plant has plenty of capacity. It's was built at 4.5 million gallons right now today. We can slide to 6 with installation of more membranes. The building itself is sized for 8 right now during the summer, and I haven't seen what our peaks were this summer, but usually in the 3.5 range million gallons per day. So yes, it has plenty of capacity. We built that into it so that there wasn't big expenses as the town continued to develop. Our intake is built for that as well. wastewater. We're going through a master planning process right now. Our plant capacity so far has been good. I think our biggest issue is not necessarily sewer capacity. It's more of a infiltration and inflow issue that we have when you run a normal flow into your wastewater plant of 4.5 million gallons per day, and we get a big rain event and we can be up to 18 million gallons per day. So that's a big issue. One that the West Side
filtering.
Interceptor is going to hopefully help with. We're continuously looking for lines that are leaking, but it's death by 1,000 cuts, really.
Yeah.
Is what it is.
Which is common in cities in Oregon.
That's by the time you put the pipe in the ground and get done, it's time to redo it again. That's just the way it works. And so as far as capacity, your average sewer flow from residential is pretty minor in comparison to what you're getting with all the rest of this. So yes, it does have the capacity. And we're continually doing upgrades, and we will continue to do upgrades. So those two issues. Did you have something? Was there something
Nope,
else?
that's it. Thank you. Thank you.
Ron, can you tell where all the extra water comes from? Is it the older part of town, the newer part? I mean,
Every part. So we do have a little bit of combined system still downtown. So we're getting actual catch basins, that we've tried to disconnect. We haven't found any smoking gun to say what, and the time to TV those lines is now. Well, we can't get a camera in them because they're full. So you do it in the spring or late summer so that you got a visual of the pipe, and you don't necessarily have the groundwater conditions that you do during high flow times. So it's really hard to pinpoint. One of the things that we're going to probably do with this master plan update is go through and do what we call a smoke test. And you get smoke coming up through the ground, through the pipe where you've got leaks. With the West Side Interceptor project, one of the things we're doing, we've noticed that our manholes leak a substantial amount. Getting a lot of leaks, big gushers coming in. So one of the things that we're doing, we're writing a change order right now to come in and do a silica sealing on all these. So we'll come in, and after we've installed the manholes, got them all done, actually have a contractor come in and seal these with
pick them up and replace them or seal them?
And it's just kind of a belt and suspenders approach. It's expensive, but when you start adding up how much water we're treating at the wastewater plant.
Now, in your budget, aren't you budgeting so much a year for upgrades and replacement of the old lines? And
So to give you we budget, well, like this year, we've budgeted, this goes to the probably the economic conditions that we're in right now. We budget anywhere from $100,000 to $120,000 for sewer lateral replacements. And right now, some of our sewer laterals are coming in at $15,000, $25,000 a lateral, just based on location. So that doesn't go very far. We've also got line replacement money that $250,000 to $300,000 a year. You start doing the math on that, and you're not getting very far. You just don't get very far. It's expensive to do.
so do you think that the system is deteriorating faster than you're fixing it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we find things all the time. Now, am I saying that the sky is falling and it's all going to come apart? No. I mean, but it's leaking. And
Can I interrupt just a little bit? If we could focus this, if there's specific questions related to this development, certainly at the end of this, any questions for Ron regarding the overall system, et cetera, I'm sure Ron and everybody would be happy to discuss. But at this point, we'd probably focus, unless there's a specific question regarding this application.
Yeah, sounds good. Do you guys have any more questions for staff on this? Do you guys feel like this apartment complex and land partition meets the development criteria?
I do.
Yeah. Okay, I'm getting head nods all around. Do you guys have any questions, concerns, or is someone would like to make a motion?
I'd just make a comment on the email objection that we got referring to the traffic there at Safeway. I'm not a traffic engineer by any means, but my observation is it's not a result of the traffic on Airport Road. That's a result of issues within the parking lot that causes the backup out onto the road. So that consideration really doesn't impact this project.
Yes.
But I do, just to make sure we're not challenged procedurally, not call for any.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Okay, any other comments? All right, would someone like to make a motion?
I move that the Planning Commission approves the proposed administrative review of application AR 21-06 for the 60-unit apartment complex and the minor land partition MLP-21-10 to divide the current parcel into two, adopting modified conditions of development to remove condition of approval 3.j in the engineering conditions and direct staff to draft an order of decision with the modified findings and conditions of approval. Wow, that was nice and smooth. That's the motion.
Second.
Got a second from Don? Okay, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay, that motion carries unanimously. The next public hearing tonight is public hearing planning file S-21-05. Before we open the public hearing, I will turn it back over to the city attorney for a summary of the format.
All right, so we are going to follow the same procedures as the previous hearing as it relates to the order of presentation. I will note specifically for each public hearing that the audience may provide oral or written testimony relevant to the hearing. All testimony and evidence must be directed towards the criteria described in the staff report or other criteria in the comprehensive plan or land use regulations. Failure to raise an issue, including constitutional issues or other issues related to the proposed conditions of approval, if any, accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the commission and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issues, will preclude an appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals.
All right, thank you. So amongst planning commissioners regarding this public hearing, planning file S-21-05, has there been any ex parte contact or conflict of interest? I'm seeing none and I'm hearing none. Nope, okay. Then we will open the public hearing and turn it over to Kelly for the staff report.
Thank you, sir. So before you tonight is a proposed subdivision for a 12-lot subdivision for residential purposes. The property is located on Walker Road and Walsum Road, just east of Stoltz Hill Road. Property is zone residential mixed density, and pretty much surrounding the entire property are properties that are residential uses with the mix of single-family homes and apartment complexes all around to the north, south, east, and west that are either zoned or designated in comprehensive plan for residential mixed-use density. There are public facilities already in the area, and as part of the development proposal, the sewer and water and storm drainage would be required to be pulled to and through the property and improved to the requirements of the engineering department. The proposal is for a 12-lot subdivision. It would include a mixture of different dwelling types based off of the property sizes. The property sizes are the net size minus any access easements would be anywhere from 3,663 square feet to just over 7,000 net square feet. And for the smaller properties that are less than 5,000 square feet, they could accommodate either zero lot line, single family types of homes, or they can have single family attached townhome type developments. And for the properties that are 5,000 square feet or larger, they could accommodate a duplex or single family homes. And to backtrack just slightly, as part of HB 2001, we did identify that the zero lot line housing type development with that smaller lot size of 3,500 square feet could also include duplexes. So they may be eligible for that as well. However, as currently proposed, it is 2 separate access easements. One access easement would be served from Walker, one would be served from Wassam. And to separate the 2 access easements, there's currently bollards that are proposed to be placed so that there's not through traffic to create 2 separate easements. But those bollards would be able to be removed for fire safety purposes. What that does is it identifies per our code that a maximum of 6 dwelling units could be accessed off of a single easement. And so there would be a mix within each access easement, an opportunity for single family homes and duplexes, so long as the total unit count does not exceed 6 units. As shown on the plan here, the bollards are proposed to be placed between lots 4 and 5. So the access off of Wassam would be limited to 6 dwelling units and the access off of Walker would be limited. And how that is separated as duplexes versus single family would be provided at the later date when they submit for building permit plans. Lots 9 and 10 would currently have access off of Walker Road. And those do equate to being able to have straight duplex properties without access off of the easements. There are additional easements that are identified, including on this western side, a private drainage easement. And then on lot 9, there's a private sewer easement. And then along Walker and Wassam, there are some public utility easements as well. As identified throughout the staff report, we identify the minimum lot size standards and lot width standards associated with these different types of dwelling units that are proposed. And the plan meets those requirements as stipulated for the either single family attached, 0 lot line, or single family homes. And so with that, I don't think there's anything else that I need to identify. We've talked about utilities, we've talked about easements, we've talked about property size. I think I'm good. If there's any other questions, I'm available, but I can conclude my staff report at this time.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
With a lot, sorry. With a lot size of 30. Go ahead, Don. Go ahead.
Sorry. So lot 1 through 8.
Yes.
Those are the proposed 0 lot line lots.
Lots 1 through 8 are proposed 0 lot line or single family attached townhome type development.
Single family attached, you said?
Yes.
Okay, so what would be the difference?
A 0 lot line is you're basically building a single family detached home all the way to the side of a property instead of having 2 separate side setbacks. Versus a single family attached, you can attach 2 or multiple units, which creates like a townhome type development.
Okay. I guess I never figured the differentiation. I thought that was all 0 lot line. Okay.
Kelly, with the lot size of net 3,600 square feet or whatever, 3,663 square feet, what is the frontage on each of those lots if there was going to be a standalone structure?
The lots are 40 feet in width, which meets the minimum requirement to be able to do a 0 lot line development.
Okay. Would these would any or all of these houses have off-street parking, or do they have to park on that easement access?
The easement access is not wide enough to provide parking. It would be specifically limited to no parking only. And so through the staff report, we identify that the property depth for those that are on the access easement have enough depth to provide at least a minimum 2-car garage. And it could potentially, depending on the design of the property, include a driveway and a 2-car garage. But based off of the 20-foot rear setback requirement and then a 20-foot garage, there's still more than enough room. I think the properties are 90 feet in length. So that provides an excess of 50 feet for the home. And then if you're building a 2-story home, then there's more than enough area at that point. So the evaluation of the property depth demonstrates that the on-street parking can be met by providing it on the parcel itself, not on the access easement or on Walker or Wassam.
Thank you.
I am correct, that private access road goes all the way through and it's open on both ends from Wassam to Walker, correct?
It goes all the way through as if you could drive through, except for the bollards located in there.
Yeah, and that's on the Wassam side?
That is in the middle of the property between
Oh,
lots 4 and
okay,
5.
I see that. I missed that.
So it's currently designed as 2 access easements. When it gets to a final plat, they could choose to convert it to a private street, which just requires a little bit extra width and can still be developable parcels. And then if you put it as a private street, then you would no longer require to have the bollards there. Because they're access easements and the code specifically restricts it to just 6 units on an access easement, you wouldn't be able to currently allow it to be as a throughway between Walker and Wassam because there's 8, 9, 10 properties that access that.
I see, that makes sense. Any other questions for staff? Looks like no. And I believe the applicants are the same as before?
Same representation,
Yes.
different applicant.
Right. Same representation.
Hello again. New hearing, so I
Deal
will
with us
introduce
again.
ourselves. Laura LaRock and Brian Vandetta with Udall Engineering and Land Surveying. So thank you, Kelly, for your overview on this. So the proposal is a subdivision request. When taking a look at here, we look at the minimum lot size with depth standards and access. So I think Kelly did a great job covering those. House Bill 2001 is playing out here, so there is a wider variety of housing types that could get permitted down the road as building permits come through Kelly's office. And those are some items that the applicant is starting to refine now, is to actually do some of the site development work and look at those housing types. But the proposal for you today is just a subdivision. So we walked through the access requirements. I think Kelly did a really great job there. It does limit the number of dwellings that shares a shared access way. And looking at this design, the applicant is also considering a private street sort of design. I'll let Brian cover what that would look like through the final plat review process.
Okay, thanks, Laura. So actually, the private street would look very similar. So in recent days, the applicant and myself have had some conversations based on the limiting factor of accesses and number of units that can draw access from a private easement versus a private roadway. I know it seems odd to come to a meeting and say we're about 95% there, but we're about 95% there to converting it to a private street. The private street would do 2 things. It would widen it up so we can have parking on the street, which is a benefit to the development and the surrounding properties as well. And it would also give us the potential to make this a through street, but honestly, I don't believe we want it to be a through street. I don't think we want to open this up so people can be cutting back and forth between 2 public roads on a private street. I think if we convert it to a private street, we'd still propose to keep the bollards in place. It just gives it a little bit quieter setting, and it doesn't offer the cross traffic from the neighborhood. It's only the traffic from these lots that would be generating using the private street. And that's really what the private street's intended for. Remember, it's going to be maintained by the lot owners. They'll have to form some sort of an easement or an HOA to do it. So they really don't want additional trips on it because that just shortens the life of the street and increases their maintenance costs. So the design, I guess on paper would look the same. We'd still have the one street going through there. It would be widened to 27 feet from curb to curb instead of 24. That would allow the parking on one side, and we would be adding a sidewalk so that there would be pedestrian connection between the 2 public streets. We just don't want the vehicular cross traffic going between the 2 streets.
And that's probably where you're going with this. Or that,
I'd say that's the direction we're planning to go with it right now, unless something changes. But with the House bill that's recently being implicated, it would be foolish to limit the number of units that can be served just because the designation of easement versus private street
Right.
for 3 feet of asphalt and a sidewalk. And that's what we've discussed with our client, so that's where we're going. Just cost of developing the street itself, the extra width and the sidewalk requirement. But as we developed, so this is probably iteration 4, maybe even 5, and before we landed on something that everybody, I think, is happy with, including my client and the city staff. So it's just kind of taken a different shape the further we progressed it. And the last progression that we've made after we made the submittal was, look, does it really make sense to save that little bit of money to compromise some potential in your development? And the answer is pretty much no with that. So we're moving it towards the private street. Lot numbers will stay the same. The code implications exactly the same. It just allows us to take some advantage of House Bill 2001 or whatever the number is.
Right.
There's a couple of them out there, but
So essentially, you're taking your kids 3 foot to the road, but you got to take it away from the property, the lots.
so the easement,
2001 affects that or allows that.
correct. The easement proposed is 30 feet
Brian,
wide.
Brian, excuse me. It's the person that's asking the questions. If they could have their mic on, I'm not hearing the questions. Only the brilliant answers by Brian.
Sorry, Trey. That was,
Oh my gosh, that sounded a little bit like a kick. Lots of sarcasm in that tone. Okay, so,
It's hard to do witty comebacks when I can't hit the right button, but thank you.
yep.
Well, go ahead and repeat your question for him, Todd.
yeah, sorry, Trey. My question was basically I was trying to understand the difference between the easement versus a private road, and the cost came about. So what I was trying to figure out was why they would the easement be there versus the private road is that 3 foot extra road, which would take away from the lot size. And I was kind of associating that with, we're allowed to do that because of the 2001 new ruling.
And
So
if
that's
you-
that. I was just trying to put things together myself. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Todd. So in actuality, the encumbrance on the lot, while this may not sound mathematically correct, so the code requirement for an easement for a private driveway is 30 feet wide. For a private street, it's 32. So really, we're only further encumbering the developable footprint in the lots by 2 feet, but we're adding 3 feet of pavement, and that gives us also the flexibility of putting in a sidewalk on that south side, or sorry, north isn't up on the sheet, on the west side of the project along the lots themselves.
Yeah, and then just to clarify, so the Lebanon Development Code has the standards for access. So an easement limits it to 6 units sharing it, so that's why it's separated today. They also have a standard for the private street. What the House Bill 2001 does is allows different housing types to be permitted where they wouldn't be otherwise. So the connection between the access, kind of apples and oranges, but
Okay.
just a point of clarification.
Thank you.
Last question, and Kelly alluded to this. Well, sorry, last question from me. I don't want to speak for you guys. If we make a decision on this tonight, as the plan is submitted, you guys are still able to make these modifications, converting the easement to a private street after tonight without having to come back before us, correct? Or is that going to be another application?
We can discuss it during staff
Okay,
comments.
all right.
for
I'll ask you that question. That's all I got then. Do you guys have any more questions for the applicant?
Yeah, we'd like to know the answer to that too, because that may persuade our decision.
I guess I could respond to it and then staff can add on to that. But what we're proposing meets the code minimum. What we would be proposing is higher than the minimum. So it seems like that would be permitted as long as maybe the motion allowed an option to be put in place.
Okay.
So that staff, if they feel that they're not able to make that modification down the road, they have some flexibility in the decision you make tonight to allow it.
Would you have, Don?
On lots 2 through 8, look, I think it's on the west side, it has private drainage easement.
Right.
Could you explain what that is and why does lot 1 not have that?
So I'll tell you first what the easement's for. So the lot right now, as it stands, it sheds water surface drainage from the southeast to northwest. So when those houses are built, their rear yards are more likely to drain towards the west. So we put that easement there so we can build a shallow swale to intercept that water so it doesn't impact the neighbors. And then we'll run a pipe or some area drains in that easement, and then we'll connect it to a storm pipe that's out in Walker. So the reason the easement's not on lot 1, because lot 1 isn't allowing any of the drainage from any other lots to cross it. All the water, we're planning to go south into the Walker Road storm drain system.
Okay.
Any other questions? I'm seeing none.
Okay.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
All right, I'm not seeing anyone here in the audience. Is there anyone over the Meet or Zoom meeting tonight who would like to speak in favor or in opposition of this application?
There's one individual that has raised their hand to speak.
Okay.
Looks like they're with the applicant. Go ahead.
This is going back to a comment made. Hi, this is, I should introduce myself first. This is Jordan Schweiger, owner of Goodwell Construction. I've been present for both applications in attendance. And this is going, I just have one comment to make. This is going back to the original first application, which we are the developer and builder on. Somebody made a comment at that time that Lebanon needs housing of single family type, and this project was proposed in recognition of that fact, and we really enjoy working in Lebanon. Everyone is reasonable, friendly, and great to work with, and we really enjoy bringing our development dollars to your jurisdiction just because you are so reasonable and easy to work with, and I really appreciate your attitude towards development and towards seeing projects get done. So it's been our posture for years, and that's why we're happy to be back. So thank you very much. I don't really have anything else to add. Just wanted to volunteer that.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else signed up, Kelly, for, okay. All right, then we will close the public testimony portion and limit discussion between the planning commission and staff. I guess I'll go right to Kelly for the question on hand.
Okay, so Laura is 90% correct on her estimation that it is an expansion upon access. So we could process that as just part of the final plat. The requirements for review of a final plat is basically that you're not increasing the number of parcels and you're not significantly diminishing or modifying anything associated with the conditions or the decision criteria. So what I would say is that decision criteria 2C specifically reflects and discusses the access easement discussion. And so I would just simply say that the planning commission should make a modified finding to say that that condition, that finding and that decision criteria should also reflect the use of a potential private street. And we can do that pretty easily. And then I'll just go and add some additional language in there to discuss that private street standards limits the number of units to be accessed from it to a total of 16 and the minimum widths, and that the property meets the minimum requirements to be able to accommodate that. One point that, since we haven't reviewed a private street standard, House Bill 2001 allows for duplexes in the same manner as single family homes that are the detached single family homes. and our 0 lot line single family homes. So the properties that are 3,500 square feet or more basically are eligible for duplexes. I don't know and haven't done the calculations about whether or not the net lot size is reduced below that 3,500 square foot threshold. If it is, then that lot size is now only eligible as an attached product, which is then only eligible as a townhome, single family home, and not a duplex at that point. So I don't know if that impacts the design.
You're referring to the 2 feet loss that would affect the lot size, correct?
Yeah, so right now it's 30, the smallest one is 3,663 square feet. If that 2 feet results in being less than 3,500 square feet of net area, then the property is only sized appropriately as single-family attached townhome development, which means that it's no longer eligible under House Bill 2001 as a duplex.
If they're 40 foot, oh, sorry, if they're
40 foot is still fine.
yeah, if they're only 40 foot, it's talking 80 square feet per lot, is what you'd be losing. So I don't think that would be at risk.
Okay, well, just putting it on the record,
Right,
that
fair
is
enough.
something of consideration to, as they're designing that private street. If that is triggered, then that becomes an implication. That's more of an informational basis. That doesn't have to be amended as part of this. But if we do make that motion to amend finding 2C to include consideration of private street standards, then I think you're covered enough to where we don't have to come back to the planning commission for the final plat review.
Because I would hate for them to have to come back before us if they're actually making an improvement to, to the whole subdivision as far as a wider road and sidewalk and such. I would like for them not to have to do that. So the language would be in a modified finding, it would be to adopt the modified findings, which would reflect the use of a private street. Do I need to have more?
No, that should be
detail?
fine. I think that with the covered conversation would be acceptable.
Okay. You guys have any more questions?
You have joined the meeting at the same
What was that, Lori? Or was that not Lori?
No.
Oh, okay. I love Zoom.
So Kelly, is there another project in town that's any similar to this? I can't think of one.
That uses access easements and bollards and that kind of stuff?
No, the 0 lot line or the attached or the 0 lot line.
We have plenty that have utilized the attached concept. It's townhome development is a single family attached. That's the standard language, or row house use. We have plenty of those that have been applied for and approved. 0 lot line has not been readily utilized. And I think even when we were talking through the House Bill 2001, it was, these aren't really readily utilized, but it should be included anyway because they have the land space to be able to do it. I just think that has brought forth an option and an opportunity to do so. But we don't currently have many, of any that I know that utilize that so far. I think we might have approved one subdivision on Jaden Drive that could have possibly used that standard as well. They just haven't applied for the final plat.
I know Albany has some, and some of the bigger communities have, but I'm not aware of them in here.
Yeah.
So either way, it meets the criteria. It's just a little unique.
Do you guys feel this meets the criteria set forth in the planning zone documents we have in front of us?
I do.
Yes.
The development criteria, okay. Then is anyone comfortable making a motion with the modifications that we referred to earlier?
I'll make a motion.
Right.
I move that the planning commission approve the proposed subdivision application S2105 for the 12 lot subdivision, adopting the written findings contained in the staff report with the conditions of development, and direct staff to draft an order of decision incorporating the findings and conditions of approval.
And the modified language?
With the condition of the modified language.
Okay, and that modified language being, we're reflecting the use of a potential private street.
Correct.
Okay.
I'll second that. That
Yeah,
was Lori
I have
this time.
Okay, I got a second from Lori.
Lori can have
All
it.
right. All right, all in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Okay, that motion carries unanimously. All right, that's all we have for public hearings tonight. Thank you both for your time.
So I want to compliment, I could really hear Chad well.
Likewise, Trey, you were coming through very hot.
Yeah. All right, next item on the agenda is commission business and comments.
We'll have a meeting next month. It'll include an annexation application, and I have another one on my desk that I can't even know what it is at this point because there's quite a few that we're processing. But we will have a meeting. We are getting underway with contracts for both the housing production strategy and the economic opportunity analysis. Both are shockingly expected to kick off mid-February, so it is going to be incredibly busy like we've been talking about. I will be probably in February or early March presenting an update of what both of those would look like, the public outreach process, and then the planning commission participation in both procedures and what that would look like. And I will be sure through both of those processes to make sure that the planning commission is fully informed of our status and how we're progressing with all of that. We were supposed to have a work session this month. I believe we'll be rescheduling that for March. We will also we have another one that's also in the pipeline for historical preservation. So we'll be working on that. And then we also will be providing an additional training regarding traffic engineering and transportation system plans and traffic impact analyses and all that kind of stuff. So we have a couple of them lined up for you guys on that. And besides that, I don't think I have anything else to add.
I know it's business we've put off a little bit, but I think the term limits are expired on positions as chair and vice chair, and I just want to put it back on the radar to, at some point, we'll have to go over that again and review that.
I can remember in the code that is for the April meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So relax, you're stuck for 3 more months.
Oh, yeah. All right.
You did a great job.
Well, I appreciate that. Not as good as Don, but
You do a great job.
I did learn from the best.
You do a great job.
Anything else?
So it was interesting reading in the Albany paper this week about City Hall.
I saw that today.
Is there some contingency plans?
Just hope.
I mean, I know it wasn't new news. It's been kicked around for a long time, but.
Yeah, sure.
We're working through that. So the first thing is we did the analysis of all things created equal, evaluation of city needs, expansion and growth needs, an estimation of space needs. That was what was presented to the city council, along with the modifications to the senior center. If all things were created equal with the demolition of the senior center and rebuilding of City Hall and the senior center, the price tag is a hefty $27 million. And so at that point, council has asked us to look at how we would pay for it and run some financial models. Once we do that, then the next step is if there's a feasible way to afford that, then the council will decide whether or not to do it that way. If there's not a feasible way to do that, we are, as with every process that we go through, looking at alternatives, evaluating different buildings that might be able to be reused, alternative options of existing facilities, or just stay in the existing building. So we're running through it. There's just no definitive answer yet because we still are.
Is there any danger of condemnation?
In the building?
No.
No. It's got some structural issues, and it's got the wind gust thing, so the parapet up on the top between the two buildings is in, somebody back in the day did an analysis on it, and it was, if you have 60-mile-an-hour gusts, or I want to say 45-mile-an-hour sustained winds, we're supposed to evacuate the building and close off Maple Street and whatnot, but other than that, no. I mean, would it?
The only building in Lebanon that's in a more precarious situation is the one next to it that has a bunch of lawyers in it. So
But we can afford to let that one go.
yeah, they're hoping the wind gust is from that direction and hits our building first.
No, we are looking. We've looked for the last several years. And there's options out there, but when you start looking at 40 and 50-year-old buildings for reuse, and you start looking at life cycle costs, and
Would that require a bond?
yeah, the council, I think they kind of sent us. We're looking at the urban renewal district as the gateway urban renewal district, and then I believe it was Councilor Bolin wanted us to look at the option of maybe a partial bond and partial payment through the urban renewal district. Really, until you get a cost on it, which we did, and now the next step is, okay, what would it look like to finance, and what are the implications of financing? Terms. What does this do to our debt? What does this do to the city long term? That's the next step in the process, so we can have that information and share it with the council and let them know. But the first step is out there, which was to at least get a sort of layout. It's a fairly detailed layout, and then with a cost estimate attached.
It'd be nice to put all government services in one area.
Yeah, that was the plan back when Academy Square was first vision, was to have everything up there.
We don't like each other that much, though. We're okay to be spread out.
Has there been any interest of, I know it's been a few years, but there used to be several inquiries a year from larger corporations that were looking potential to locate in Lebanon. And obviously you can never discuss the names, but there's always the fact that there was interest. Is that gone away in recent years just due to the wetlands problems we have here, or are you still getting some interest from outside?
We still get interest. Interest versus movement is a different thing. I can tell you we have one company that we have continually been working with for the last 6-8 months. That company has experienced some turnover, and so it's kind of restarting again, but it's still on the radar. But the wetlands issue is a huge issue. Bringing in major industry it's an uphill battle. But I think you see that as an uphill battle everywhere. If you read about Corvallis, they have their entire southern half of the city that's inundated with wetlands, and they're trying to figure out what to do with it. And everybody's in that same boat if you're in the Willamette Valley. And so we still get the interest. We're just getting the interest and a look someplace else right now.
Utah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You guys have anything else? All right. This meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody.